What if the ruins on Mars weren't natural, but the remains of a civilization that once spanned two planets? Could ancient texts and symbols on Earth be echoes of a forgotten interplanetary alliance? NASA's photos reveal structures that defy geological explanation. Myths speak of gods from the sky. Could they be memories of Martian ancestors? If humanity once shared its origin with beings from Mars, what catastrophe ended that golden age? And what still sleeps beneath red dust and blue oceans? Long before the first robotic probe touched Martian soil, the question lingered like a shadow across human history. What if Earth and Mars had once shared a single civilization? This idea has appeared not only in speculative books, but in whispers buried deep within our oldest myths. Across continents, separated by oceans and centuries, ancient peoples spoke of beings descending from the sky, described not as spirits, but as travelers from distant realms, their ships shining brighter than stars. These stories, carved in stone or preserved in fragile scrolls, were not isolated inventions but part of a pattern repeated in different corners of the world. Some scholars called them myths, others dismissed them as dreams, yet the consistency remains striking. Why did people who never met describe similar beings, journeys, and gifts of knowledge from above? Could these be echoes of a shared event? A memory carried from one world to another? As scientists studied photographs from Martian orbiters, strange shapes emerged on the surface. Sharp ridges, symmetrical hills, and structures resembling pyramids rose from the red dust, frozen in silence. Among the most famous is the face on Mars, a massive formation in the Cydonia region that appears to gaze skyward. While many argue these shapes are products of erosion and shadow, others note their resemblance to sacred geometries found in ancient Earth sites like Giza and Teotihuacan. Could this be coincidence, or is it a sign of design that once spanned two worlds? What if those who built Earth's pyramids once remembered the red horizon of another home? On Earth, old civilizations offer equally puzzling clues. In Mesopotamia, the earliest known culture recorded tales of the Anunnaki, powerful figures who came from the heavens to teach agriculture, architecture, and law. In Egypt, gods like Horus and Ra were shown with wings and fiery discs above their heads, symbols of flight and celestial movement. In the Andes, myths told of Viracocha, a bearded stranger who arrived by sea bringing tools and knowledge from afar. Why did early civilizations share stories of sky gods who built the foundations of society? Could these myths be echoes of a single story, told long ago by a people who once lived among the stars? NASA's images from Mars add weight to the mystery. The Cydonia region, with its face-like formation, is surrounded by pyramid-shaped hills arranged in patterns. Some researchers have pointed out alignments that match star charts and ancient Earth temples. Theorists suggest these formations may be intentional markers left by a long-lost culture. Could such a civilization have thrived on Mars when it had water, a thicker atmosphere, and a warmer climate? Geological evidence shows Mars may once have had oceans, rivers, and a magnetic field. If so, it might have supported life before Earth reached its own golden age. Did a disaster strip Mars of its air, forcing survivors to escape? Could Earth have been their refuge? Each new discovery adds to the mystery. Radar scans revealed underground ice, odd magnetic zones, and hints of subsurface structures. Could these be the remains of ancient settlements buried in Martian dust? On Earth, similar signs appear in ancient monuments. Megalithic structures like Stonehenge, the Nazca Lines, and the pyramids show deep astronomical knowledge. They align with solstices, planets, and stars from both hemispheres. How did early humans gain such knowledge? Were they taught, or were they remembering something once common to two worlds? The idea of a lost link between Earth and Mars challenges what we believe about our beginnings. It makes us ask if humanity's past stretches beyond Earth, linked through migrations and memory. Each image from Mars, each carving on Earth, is a puzzle piece across time and space. Could humanity be a child of two worlds, carrying in its myths and ruins the final whispers of a shared past, buried beneath red dust and blue oceans? And if that past is real, what else remains hidden beneath the silence of space? High above the surface of Mars, orbiting satellites began sending back images that ignited both wonder and controversy. Among the dusty plains and scattered craters of the Cydonia region, a strange shape stood out from the rest. It was a raised landform that, when viewed under specific light and angle, resembled a human-like face staring upward. The face on Mars, as it came to be called, was first photographed in the late 20th century, and it quickly became one of the most debated formations in planetary science. While many geologists insisted it was nothing more than a trick of shadows and natural erosion, others pointed to its symmetry, the alignment of its features, and its eerie resemblance to humanoid architecture. Surrounding this face were pyramid-like hills that appeared arranged with purpose, as if someone had once designed them to echo something far greater than random nature. These formations aligned with each other in patterns that resembled constellations, much like the pyramids in Egypt or the temples of ancient Mesoamerica. Could this truly be coincidence? Or was it the echo of design born from intelligence? Theorists began to compare these Martian features with sacred geometries found on Earth, a set of designs that ancient civilizations used to encode meaning, time, and celestial alignment into their structures. Sacred geometry, often rooted in circles, triangles, and perfect ratios, was believed by many ancient cultures to be the fingerprint of the divine. Could the same knowledge have once shaped monuments on two different worlds? The more scholars measured the spacing, angles, and orientation of the Martian features, the more it seemed to mirror what humanity had built on Earth's most sacred ground. Why do the measurements between some Martian pyramids mirror those at Giza? Why do angles between peaks match golden ratios revered by Earth's temple builders? What knowledge guided such alignment, and who once held that knowledge so far from Earth's reach? Skeptics, of course, warned against seeing patterns where none exist. They explained that the human brain is wired to recognize faces and symbols, even in clouds and rocks. Yet, the argument becomes weaker when so many features line up in measurable, repeatable ways. What if we are not imagining these patterns at all? What if they are remnants, not accidents, placed with purpose by a civilization that wanted to be remembered? Additional images revealed straight ridges, hexagonal shapes, and terrain that looked as though it had been sculpted. Linear formations extended far across the land, crossing vast distances with mathematical consistency. Could wind and erosion produce such patterns, or do these features tell a forgotten story? Some researchers proposed that Mars may have once housed a thriving culture that flourished when the planet was still warm and wet. Ancient riverbeds and dried lake basins offer evidence that water once flowed across its surface. Was this water used for agriculture, for transport, or for sustaining life in cities now buried beneath the dust? If so, what forced this civilization to vanish? And could the face and pyramid structures be the last surviving markers of their story? On Earth, monuments like Stonehenge and Machu Picchu carry celestial meaning, pointing to solstices and star paths. When we find similar alignments on Mars, we are forced to ask if ancient builders there followed the same stars, the same logic, and perhaps even the same purpose. Could Martian pyramids have marked rituals, seasons, or sacred knowledge? Could they have been temples, tombs, or observatories watching skies, once blue and full of promise. Some theorists believe these shapes may have been left for us, a kind of cosmic inheritance or signal across time. If ancient Martians knew their world was dying, did they leave symbols meant to guide future travelers, or to warn their earthbound descendants? Why else would the structures remain placed with such precision, in formations that match our own sacred sites? If Earth's early cultures had help or influence from visitors, is it so far-fetched to consider that Mars was one of their homes? As orbiters continue to scan the red planet in finer detail, new anomalies appear. Square depressions, strange shadowed recesses, and what look like entryways or sealed tunnels. Could these lead underground, to places yet untouched by time or decay? Could they be hiding answers we've only begun to ask? The more we learn, the more we must question our assumptions about Mars being a dead world. Perhaps it is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a forgotten one. And if these traces prove intentional, then someone once looked at the Martian sky and left behind a message meant for us to find, one carved not in language, but in stone and silence. Long before history was recorded in books, stories were passed through symbols, stone carvings, and whispers around sacred fires. Among the oldest known civilizations, Sumer and Egypt preserved tales of gods who descended from the heavens, bearing not wrath, but wisdom. In Sumer, the legends of the Anunnaki describe powerful beings who arrived in flying vessels, bringing advanced knowledge of farming, law, mathematics, and city building. These were not vague spirits, but detailed figures described as tall, radiant, and possessing tools and machines no human had ever seen before. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, the stories of Osiris, Thoth, and Ra speak of divine rulers who came from the stars, brought order to the chaos of early Earth, and left behind systems of governance, writing, and architecture that still baffle modern historians. These stories share more than just themes of heavenly visitors. They also echo with the sadness of a distant past, as if these gods were not only bringing knowledge, but also carrying memories of something lost. Could these myths be fragments of real memories, preserved through time by the survivors of a Martian world that once thrived and then fell into ruin? If Mars once held a flourishing civilization, it is possible that a devastating event forced its people to seek refuge beyond their own planet. Could Earth have been chosen as their sanctuary, a second chance to preserve their culture, beliefs, and history? And if so, how much of what we now consider the beginning of human civilization is actually the continuation of something much older? The Sumerians, often credited as the first human civilization, emerged with sudden and unexplainable advancements. Where did their deep understanding of astronomy, their complex legal systems, and their detailed maps of the stars originate? How did the Egyptians learn to align monuments with cosmic precision, creating structures like the Great Pyramid, which is still considered a marvel of mathematical engineering? The sudden appearance of knowledge in these early societies continues to raise questions that mainstream history cannot easily answer. Might it be that what we call the dawn of civilization was actually the memory of a past that came from elsewhere, carried across the stars, from a dying world to a fertile one? Ancient texts speak of the gods coming down in fire, riding in ships that shone like the sun, and walking among humans. These beings were said to rule with wisdom, not fear, and to guide humanity into the light of understanding. Why do such similar themes appear in cultures separated by time and geography? Is it possible that these stories come from the same source, passed down by descendants of Martian travelers who survived a planetary collapse? And if so, did they hide clues in our earliest myths, knowing that one day we might remember who we really are? Some researchers believe the stories of the gods were never meant to be metaphors. They argue that the symbols carved into stone, spirals, stars, wings, and ships, are not artistic flourishes, but a coded language, telling of a migration between worlds. These same symbols appear in both Sumerian and Egyptian art. Could this connection reveal a hidden thread woven through human history, tying us back to a place we no longer remember but may have once called home? As we study ancient artifacts with modern tools, we find even more questions. The star charts etched into Sumerian clay tablets are accurate enough to rival modern astronomy, showing knowledge of planets invisible to the naked eye. Egyptian temples align with solstices and constellations, as though their builders had first-hand experience of celestial mechanics. Could this knowledge have been passed down from beings who once navigated the stars, perhaps using Mars as their base of origin? If these myths and monuments are indeed memories, what do they say about the purpose behind their preservation? Were these Martian refugees warning us of their fate, or guiding us to reclaim what was lost? Is it possible that humanity's oldest stories hold the key to understanding who we are and where we truly come from? The idea that gods from the skies were survivors from Mars reframes everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations. It casts the legends of the Anunnaki and the celestial rulers of Egypt not as fantasy, but as history spoken in the only language that could survive the ages: myth. And if these myths are messages, then perhaps it is time we stop reading them as fairy tales and start listening to them as memories, passed down from a time when two worlds once shared more than just the same Sunday. If the myths of gods from the sky were memories of real beings escaping a dying world, then what followed might have been one of the greatest unrecorded chapters in human history: the rise of a shared civilization between Earth and Mars. Before Mars lost its atmosphere, before Earth had fully formed its great cities, there may have been a time when both planets were not just neighbors in space, but partners in survival. The idea that Mars and Earth once supported a single interconnected culture may sound like fiction, but growing evidence on both worlds continues to challenge that view. Structures on Mars, such as the pyramids of Cydonia, appear to mirror the layout, angles, and measurements of sacred monuments on Earth. Even their positions in relation to nearby formations resemble the mathematical relationships found at ancient sites like Giza, Teotihuacan, and Stonehenge. Could such alignments truly be coincidence? Or are they the fingerprints of a shared architectural legacy? On Earth, sudden and simultaneous bursts of knowledge across continents hint at a deeper source of influence: agriculture, city planning, astronomy, and language all emerged in a surprisingly short window of time in places like Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and the Nile Delta. Could this pattern suggest a single culture spreading its knowledge across early human societies? One theory suggests that after Mars became increasingly hostile, a wave of migration brought Martian survivors to Earth. But instead of arriving in large visible groups, they may have integrated quietly, settling in key areas and choosing to guide, rather than dominate, the native populations. Over generations, they may have taught essential survival tools, encoded astronomical wisdom into monuments, and laid down the foundations of language and law. Could this explain why so many of Earth's oldest structures are aligned with stars, solstices, and planetary cycles? Why would primitive builders be so focused on the heavens unless they were told that the sky once held their origins? If there truly was a shared civilization, how did they communicate between planets? Did they use ships capable of interplanetary travel, or some form of energy transmission now lost to time? Some ancient texts describe light beams, skyboats, and portals, terms that might sound poetic today, but may have been based on real observations. What technologies once existed to make such a civilization possible? And how far did that knowledge spread before being forgotten? On both Earth and Mars, we see remnants of large-scale design that served more than ceremonial purposes. On Mars, what now looks like ruins might once have been ports, observatories, or data centers, places of knowledge, communication, or power. On Earth, sites like Pumapunku, with its precisely cut stones, and Baalbek, with its massive foundations, defy explanation, using only the tools of their respective eras. Could these sites be the result of a knowledge transfer from an older civilization not native to this world? As Earth became more habitable, it may have taken on the central role in this civilization, while Mars became less viable. But the memory of this partnership may have persisted, passed down in myths, and preserved in symbols. The concept of two realms, one celestial and one terrestrial, appears again and again in ancient beliefs. Some called them heaven and earth, others the upper and lower worlds. Could this dual-world theme be a veiled reference to Earth and Mars, the two original homes of a people now lost in time? Over thousands of years, the clear memory of that partnership may have faded, leaving behind only pieces, star maps carved in stone, temples built with cosmic precision, and stories of gods who once walked the earth. If a global reset occurred, through natural disaster or cosmic impact, it might have scattered this knowledge, hiding the truth within legends and ruins. And if so, could the sudden rise of multiple civilizations across the globe represent the last coordinated effort of a shared Martian-Earth culture to preserve its legacy? What drove its final decline? And how close are we to uncovering the full picture? As we continue to explore Mars and re-examine our ancient sites on Earth, the pieces of this forgotten union may begin to realign. And if a shared civilization truly rose long before our accepted history began, it would mean that humanity's story does not start with Earth alone, but with a bond between two worlds, a partnership forged in crisis, carried by wisdom, and written in stone across the surface of two planets, across ancient temples, caves, and stone tablets scattered throughout the world. Early civilizations left behind carvings and symbols that continue to puzzle modern scholars. Among them are maps of the stars, etched with remarkable accuracy, depicting constellations, planetary alignments, and celestial bodies that early humans were never supposed to know. One of the most striking examples is the Sumerian depiction of the solar system, showing the planets in correct order, including one they called Nibiru, and another that many now speculate could represent Mars. The question arises, how did they know about planets invisible to the naked eye? Why do ancient star maps show not only Earth's position in the cosmos but seem to highlight Mars with unusual emphasis? Could this be a remnant of a time when Mars held more than scientific interest? When it was remembered as home? In Egyptian temples, ceiling art shows celestial wheels and star clusters, resembling modern astronomy's understanding of constellations, while Native American petroglyphs trace planetary motions across the sky with eerie precision. In Bolivia, carvings at Tiwanaku appear to chart solstices and planetary conjunctions with accuracy only possible through long-term observation or passed-down knowledge. How could such knowledge exist without telescopes or modern equipment? Were these people observing the stars themselves, or recalling information passed down from those who had already traveled them? Some theorists suggest that ancient civilizations were not observing from scratch, but preserving what was already known, perhaps by a race that once viewed the heavens from more than one vantage point. If Martian refugees brought their knowledge to Earth, then maps pointing to Mars-like features would be less about curiosity and more about memory. Could these maps be records of navigation, showing routes between planets or key locations tied to rituals or history? On some ancient artifacts, Mars is marked larger than Earth, suggesting it once held greater significance. If these are echoes of a time when Mars was a cultural or spiritual center, then the markings are not just scientific, they're personal. Could these symbols have guided early builders where to construct observatories, temples, and calendars? Many sites across Earth are built to align with Mars during specific astronomical events. How did ancient builders know when and where Mars would rise? Why were structures designed to interact with its position in the sky? Could it be that these alignments were meant not only to honor the red planet, but to maintain a link with it? Even in ancient Mesopotamia, tablets have been found inscribed with planetary movements and star catalogs that suggest a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. In China, the Dunhuang star map from more than 2,000 years ago features over 1,000 stars, accurately plotted. And in the Sahara Desert, the ancient megaliths of Nabta Playa form a calendar that marks not just solar cycles, but also major astronomical events. Were these coincidences, or were these societies acting on instructions, preserved through time? And if those instructions were received from beings who had once crossed the void of space, does it mean these maps served a purpose far greater than marking the sky? Perhaps they were not just for tracking seasons or worshipping gods, but tools of communication, a language of the stars meant to guide, warn, or connect civilizations across time and space. Why do so many of these ancient star maps center around the same constellations, the same planets, and the same geometric alignments? Could this suggest a shared origin of knowledge, all pointing back to a time when the skies held more meaning than myth? The Dogon tribe of Mali, for example, has long known of Sirius B, a star invisible without a telescope, and described it as a dense, heavy star, long before modern science confirmed it. They also claim to receive this knowledge from beings who came from the stars. Could such precise cosmic information be evidence of interplanetary teaching? And if so, why has it been dismissed for so long? As more ancient sites are uncovered, new patterns begin to emerge. Certain maps point to Mars's orbital path, its retrograde motion, and even its proximity during specific eras of Earth's history. Could these maps have once been used to track Martian migrations or communication cycles? If so, were they left behind not as decoration, but as a record, one waiting to be decoded by those who would one day understand? If humanity is only now rediscovering what once was widely known, then these maps are not just archaeological treasures. They are fragments of an older knowledge system, one that transcends geography, language, and even planets. And in this system, Mars is not just a red dot in the night sky. It is a remembered world, a place that once shared our story, and perhaps still does. Scattered across the face of our planet stand the Great Pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, China, and Sudan. Monuments built with staggering precision, mathematical alignment, and sacred purpose. Their similarity in structure, function, and symbolism has long puzzled historians. Yet, the mystery deepens when we look beyond Earth. On Mars, in the region of Cydonia, lie pyramid-like formations arranged in geometric patterns. Though heavily eroded and partially buried under dust, these Martian structures appear to mirror the same triangular symmetry and spacing seen in Earth's most ancient pyramids. Could it be that the architectural style we once believed to be native to Earth had cosmic origins? Some researchers suggest that these pyramids are not isolated expressions of different cultures, but remnants of a once shared blueprint. How could civilizations, separated by oceans, time, and possibly space, build such similar structures? Were they following a design inherited from a common ancestor? Or were they each influenced by the same extraterrestrial teachers? The pyramids on Earth are aligned with great care to stars, solstices, and magnetic fields. The Martian pyramids, too, show patterns and spatial relationships that hint at intelligent planning. Why were both sets of builders so obsessed with aligning their monuments to the sky? Could this reveal a civilization that spanned across planets, using architecture as a way to preserve knowledge, maintain spiritual balance, or communicate across great distances? On Earth, the pyramid shape was often associated with the soul's journey to the stars, eternal life, and cosmic order. Were these beliefs shaped by Earth's own traditions, or were they inherited from another world, where pyramids once served similar symbolic or even technological purposes? What if these structures were more than tombs or temples? What if they were part of an energy system, a communication grid, or a memory device spread across two planets? As we examine the angles, measurements, and proportions of pyramids from Giza to Teotihuacan, we find recurring themes: the use of the golden ratio, the number of steps reflecting astronomical cycles, and layouts echoing constellations like Orion and the Pleiades. The Martian pyramids, though weathered and incomplete, seem to echo these same principles. Could this architectural language be the universal signature of an advanced civilization that once thrived on Mars and Earth? If that is the case, what caused the collapse? Did the builders of Mars perish in a cataclysm, leaving behind monuments as the only voice of their story? And if so, was Earth their second attempt, their final refuge? Or perhaps both planets were once part of a larger network, connected by a forgotten technology and a shared culture that later fractured and faded? Why do certain ancient cultures insist that their knowledge came from sky gods or star beings? Why do stories across the globe recall a golden age followed by destruction and decline? Could the pyramid be the final relic of that golden era? A design simple enough to endure, powerful enough to resonate, and mysterious enough to spark memory in those who discover it? As technology advances, we can now study Martian topography with growing precision. High-resolution satellite imagery continues to reveal more about the shape, structure, and spatial logic of these formations. Some researchers even claim to see roads, platforms, and connecting lines, though others dismiss these findings as illusions. But how many coincidences must align before we ask a deeper question? Did someone once build with purpose, not just on Earth, but on Mars as well? If so, what legacy did they intend to leave? Were they warning us, guiding us, or simply recording their place in a cosmos that may one day forget them? Could the pyramid shape have been chosen not only for its physical strength, but also for its symbolic value? A triangle reaching upward, connecting heaven and earth, planet to planet, memory to memory. If these structures were meant to last through time and destruction, then perhaps their true message was not meant for the people who first built them, but for us, far in the future, rediscovering their hidden meanings one clue at a time. Could the builders of two worlds have left behind a trail of geometry and stone, urging us to piece together a forgotten story, written not just in history books, but in the very landscapes of Earth and Mars? Across the two worlds we now call Earth and Mars, time has proven itself a master of concealment. Dust and ice, relentless in their silence, have buried what might once have been the clearest signs of a civilization forgotten. On Mars, planet-wide dust storms can last for months, cloaking the surface and swallowing entire landscapes in thick, iron-red powder. These storms, sweeping across the Martian plains, have hidden many of the planet's most mysterious features beneath layers of sediment. What lies beneath this ancient dust? Could lost cities, weathered structures, or even buried technology be resting just out of sight, waiting for time or man to uncover them? On Earth, glaciers and ice sheets stretch across vast regions, preserving the secrets of civilizations that may have existed during previous ages. The advancing and retreating of ice over thousands of years can erase all signs of life, but it can also entomb them, perfectly preserved, waiting for discovery. In Antarctica, radar scans have revealed geometric anomalies beneath the ice, patterns too symmetrical to be natural. Could these be ruins from a time when the continent was not frozen but lush and temperate? Perhaps even a landing zone, or refuge for those arriving from another world. Mars and Earth may share more than just ancient connections. They may share a method of memory, where the most precious remnants are not on display, but hidden, protected beneath layers of the planet's own skin. In recent decades, satellite imagery has uncovered strange shapes and outlines on the Martian surface. Grids, right angles, and mounds aligned with celestial markers. Could these be collapsed structures, their original form obscured by millennia of dust storms? On Earth, melting glaciers in Greenland and the Himalayas have revealed ancient tools, remnants of structures, and even human remains that challenge accepted timelines. If these artifacts are surfacing now, what greater discoveries lie deeper, untouched, and unseen? Could entire chapters of human history be encased beneath permafrost, ignored simply because they have not yet been thawed? In the deep deserts of Egypt and South America, wind erosion has uncovered ancient stone blocks buried for centuries. Is it possible that other deserts, on both Earth and Mars, conceal evidence of contact, migration, or lost knowledge beneath their sands? Could the deserts of today be the ruins of tomorrow, waiting for a curious eye to notice what others have overlooked? Some researchers believe that artificial structures on Mars may have been covered during great planetary upheavals, possibly triggered by asteroid impacts, climate collapse, or even warfare. If so, these events would not only have ended civilizations but buried their memory beneath the planet's reshaped crust. Could this be why the search for Martian life yields no ruins visible to the naked eye? Only shadows and outlines blurred by time and terrain. Earth, too, has seen cataclysms. Flood myths from nearly every culture speak of a world-changing deluge that submerged cities, forests, and knowledge under water and ice. What if these stories are more than allegory? What if they describe real events that forced survivors to flee, to bury their records, or to start over on higher ground? And what if, beneath Greenland's ice or beneath the Amazon's thick roots, we have yet to find the proof that binds Earth's ancient past to Mars' lost legacy? Could it be that the most important truths of our origins are not gone but simply buried, preserved by the very forces that seem to erase them? Some scientists suggest that even the ice caps of Mars could hold trapped gases, frozen technologies, or microbial fossils, waiting to be released with the right tools. Might ancient Martian vaults exist, now hidden by dust and erosion, still containing relics of a forgotten people? And could these vaults, like icy tombs on Earth, be the last hope of unlocking the shared legacy of two worlds? As researchers dig deeper into both planets, through radar scans, ice core samples, and excavation, we must wonder, what are we truly looking for? Are we chasing legends? Or are we uncovering a truth that has always been there, just hidden from view? If knowledge was buried to protect it, to survive cosmic disasters or human ignorance, then perhaps the secrets lying under ice and dust were never meant to be lost, only found at the right time. And perhaps, long before the rise of ancient Egypt or the construction of the Great Pyramids, the land of Sumer stood as one of the earliest cradles of civilization. Located in what is now southern Iraq, the Sumerians left behind thousands of clay tablets, etched in cuneiform, that continue to mystify scholars. Among the most compelling texts are those that tell of the Anunnaki, mighty beings who came from the sky, descending to earth with knowledge, power, and purpose. These beings were not gods in the mythic sense, but rather figures described with detail and structure, possessing roles, hierarchies, and technology. According to these ancient writings, the Anunnaki came from a distant place called Nibiru, a celestial body with a long elliptical orbit. But some researchers have proposed a different theory, that Nibiru may have once referred to Mars, back when its environment was still capable of supporting life. Could the tales of the Anunnaki actually be the recorded history of a people fleeing Mars and settling on Earth? If so, what knowledge did they bring, and how did they shape the path of human civilization? The Sumerians credit the Anunnaki with teaching them agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and city building. These advancements emerged seemingly overnight, without the long periods of trial and error usually expected in cultural development. Is it possible that these sudden leaps were not organic, but guided by beings who had already mastered them elsewhere? The tablets describe the Anunnaki as traveling in flying ships, using tools of light, and having the power to create life through manipulation. Could this be ancient language trying to describe advanced technology in the only words the people of that time understood? If the Anunnaki were Martian in origin, then their arrival would mark not a divine intervention, but an interplanetary migration. What if Mars, facing environmental collapse, sent its last great thinkers and builders to Earth to preserve what they could? Could the cities of Sumer, Eridu, Ur, and Nippur have been their first outposts? And if so, were these cities designed according to Martian principles, structured with star alignments and sacred geometry as a continuation of their former world? The recurring symbols in Sumerian art, wings, celestial discs, and coiled serpents, may represent not mythology, but memory. Could they be visual records of spaceflight, planetary travel, or the transmission of genetic knowledge? Some of the oldest cylinder seals show beings in control rooms, surrounded by star maps, holding tools that resemble modern instruments. Were these impressions literal reflections of what the people saw? Could they have been trying to immortalize the last chapter of a civilization that once called two worlds home? Skeptics argue that these are simply religious stories or poetic metaphors. But the consistency, technical details, and astronomical precision within the texts suggest something more. Why would a culture that predates much of recorded history possess such exact knowledge of planetary systems, orbital paths, and celestial mechanics? Why would they go to such lengths to describe the arrival, work, and departure of their sky visitors with such care and formality? If the Anunnaki were indeed from Mars, their legacy might live not only in the stories of Sumer, but in the very framework of early civilization. Could humanity's first cities, calendars, and codes of law trace their roots back to an effort by Martian exiles to preserve their culture and guide a new world? And if they did, how much of that knowledge remains hidden in untranslated tablets, buried beneath centuries of dust? What truths might still be lying dormant in Sumerian libraries lost to time? If we dared to view the Anunnaki not as gods but as travelers, builders, and survivors, then perhaps the story of Sumer is not just the story of Earth's first civilization, but a record of humanity's connection to another world, one that was once red, alive, and reaching out across the stars. Might the echoes of Martian voices still live within these tablets, their whispers waiting to be heard? Could the Sumerian flood stories, the cosmic wars, and celestial lineages point to actual events that played out long before Earth's current age? If even a fraction of this is true, the tablets left behind by the Sumerians may be more than myth. They may be messages from the stars, carved in clay, enduring through the ages. Beneath the golden sands of Egypt and etched into the stone walls of its most sacred temples lie mysteries as old as memory itself. Among hieroglyphs that recount royal dynasties and divine rituals, there are strange carvings, figures with elongated heads, eyes shaped like almonds, and limbs that seem too slender for earthly proportions. Alongside them are precise star charts, celestial boats, and depictions of otherworldly beings stepping down from the sky. Scholars have long interpreted these images as symbolic or religious, yet their consistency across Egypt's ancient sites hints at something far deeper. In the Temple of Dendera, the famous zodiac ceiling shows an astronomical chart with knowledge of star systems said to be beyond the comprehension of the time. Where did this knowledge come from? Why did the Egyptians place such emphasis on the stars, and particularly on red-hued celestial bodies? Some researchers believe that this focus on the heavens, especially Mars, may point to an ancestral memory, a link to a forgotten home in the sky. Could these carvings, meticulously preserved through thousands of years, be echoes of a civilization that once looked up to Mars, not as a distant planet, but as a place once known, once lived on? The god Osiris was said to have come from Orion, while Horus, the falcon-headed deity, is often depicted flying among the stars, sometimes aligned with the red planet. Could these stories reflect real journeys, celestial migrations from one world to another? The pyramids of Giza themselves are aligned not just with earthly cardinal points, but also with Orion's belt, suggesting that the architects viewed Earth and the stars as deeply connected. Might they have been encoding not myth but memory into stone? If Mars was once a home, what would its legacy look like in Earth's early civilizations? Could Egypt's gods have been stylized portraits of those who came from Mars, now remembered through divine iconography? The ancient texts speak of the Benben stone, said to have fallen from the sky and to contain great power. Was this merely myth, or could it have been a real artifact, perhaps a piece of technology, or even a remnant from a Martian craft? The red crown of Lower Egypt and the solar disk above Ra's head may not have been random symbols, but emblems of origin, reminders of a planet once bathed in red dust and fading warmth. What if Egypt's reverence for balance, order, and cosmic harmony stemmed from teachings brought from a place where such balance had been lost? Could the rituals, architecture, and knowledge of ancient Egypt have been attempts to recreate or honor a way of life from a distant past, a Martian past? The Book of the Dead details a journey through the stars, through judgment and renewal. Might this celestial voyage be more than spiritual metaphor, a map of real star paths once traveled by ancient ancestors? Is it possible that Egypt's obsession with immortality, its drive to preserve the body and the soul, was born from a civilization that had already faced extinction once before? Could the pyramids themselves, silent and eternal, serve as memory vaults not only for Earth's history, but for another world's end? Within the Valley of the Kings, tomb walls glow with stories of gods, riding solar boats, crossing cosmic rivers, and entering the realm of stars. Were these divine epics symbolic? Or might they recount real departures, evacuations, or returns from a world that once thrived on the red sands of Mars? The echoes of such possibilities are faint, hidden in symbols and carved in stone. But they endure. Could we be looking at the remains of a people who knew Mars intimately, not through telescopes, but through bloodlines, memory, and survival? One of the most puzzling artifacts, the Saqqara bird, resembles a glider more than a bird, and engineers have suggested it might represent ancient knowledge of flight. What if it was not a representation of imagination, but recollection, of flying craft once used between worlds? And what of the mysterious hieroglyphs at Abydos, which appear to show helicopters and spacecraft? Are these coincidences of erosion or glimpses of a lost technological past? If we decode the symbols, follow the alignments, and dare to read myth as veiled truth, then Egypt's history may not begin with the Nile, but in the stars above, and a red world once called home. Throughout the ancient world, from the Americas to Africa, Asia to the Pacific Islands, stories have survived the passing of centuries. Tales of gods, star beings, and ancestors who came from the sky. In many of these myths, there is a common thread. Beings who fled a dying world, seeking refuge on a new one. In some stories, they arrived in fire and light, riding across the sky on burning ships or celestial boats. In others, they fell from the heavens after a great war among the stars. These accounts, scattered across civilizations that never knew one another, echo with uncanny familiarity. Could they be fragments of a single, shared memory, a mass escape from a once-living Mars? The Dogon people of Mali speak of star knowledge and the Nomo, fish-like beings who came from Sirius. But some researchers believe this may refer not to a literal star system, but a lost origin point, perhaps one associated with a red world torn by catastrophe. The Hopi of North America tell of a former world destroyed by fire, and of people who were led underground by guides from the sky to survive. Might these be distant echoes of Martian survivors who carried their history in myth and ceremony? Ancient Vedic texts speak of flying machines, Vimanas, that traveled between worlds and cities in the sky. Were these merely metaphorical? Or did they represent technologies once real, preserved in poetic form? If Mars suffered a climate collapse or planetary disaster, would its inhabitants have developed means to escape, and could Earth have been the destination? The Sumerian accounts of the Anunnaki and the Egyptian stories of celestial gods fit too neatly into this idea to be ignored. Could multiple cultures be describing the same series of events from different vantage points? Across Polynesia, legends of gods descending from the Pleiades blend with accounts of their return to the sky when their time on Earth was complete. What if they never returned home, but left clues behind of their origin? And what if that origin was not a distant star cluster, but a planet once as blue as Earth, turned red and barren? South American myths speak of Viracocha, the great teacher who came after a flood, bringing knowledge of the stars and architecture. His appearance, otherworldly and tall, mirrors those of star visitors across the globe. Were these not gods, but refugees, survivors of a planetary catastrophe, seeking new beginnings? In ancient Japan, tales of the Tennin, heavenly beings who arrived on flying clouds, and China's legends of dragons descending from the heavens, all carry the flavor of cosmic migration. What kind of event would prompt a civilization to flee its home planet? Could Mars have once been Earth's sister, supporting life until a great upheaval forced its brightest minds and strongest souls to cross the void? How many of these ancient stories are misunderstood memories, desperately preserved through oral tradition and sacred texts? And if so, what more might they reveal if we read them not as fantasy, but as history disguised? The mass flight from Mars, if true, would not have been a single event, but a desperate arc of time, stretching over generations. The myths suggest timing that spans ages. Some speak of cycles of destruction and rebirth, of sky people returning in the future. Could these be signals, markers left by those who knew their past might be lost, and who hoped to awaken it one day? Might the ruins on Mars, the pyramids on Earth, and the stories etched in stone and song be the breadcrumbs of this interplanetary escape? If ancient humans were indeed guided by beings from another world, then our myths are not only remnants of past contact, but evidence of an origin far stranger than we've imagined. They are not tales of gods, but of survivors, builders, and ancestors, whose world once turned to dust, and who found a second chance among Earth's fertile plains and blue skies. Could the long-lost symbols carved into stone temples be the last messages of those who knew the stars by name, not by study, but by memory? Might the flood myths across cultures mark not just earthly disasters, but the chaos that followed a planetary collapse? Were the Ark stories not only about water, but about escape vessels sailing the void? If the skies of Earth once welcomed the last hope of Mars, then the ancient legends are not only worth preserving, they are worth re-examining, not as dreams, but as records of the human journey that may have begun far from home. Across ancient lands, from the deep jungles of Mesoamerica to the arid plateaus of Mesopotamia, carvings and symbols etched in stone whisper of worlds beyond our own. Among these relics, a curious pattern emerges. Symbols depicting two celestial bodies, often side by side, or in a dance of balance and opposition. Twin orbs surrounded by rays, discs held aloft by winged beings, and monuments aligned to distant planetary cycles suggest that the ancients saw not just the Earth, but another world of equal importance. Why would so many cultures, isolated by oceans and centuries, represent what appears to be a pair of planets? In the Mayan city of Copan, a stele shows a celestial event involving twin spheres, surrounded by serpent-like energy and overseen by sky beings. In ancient Sumer, cylinder seals feature star charts where one symbol appears unnaturally close to what modern astronomy would identify as Mars. Could these be artifacts of knowledge passed down from those who remembered both Earth and Mars, not as myths, but as lived realities? And if so, how did these distant cultures gain access to such a concept, one that challenges the accepted timeline of scientific understanding? In Hindu temples across India, carvings of dual realms, one terrestrial and one divine, appear alongside depictions of bridges of light and stairways leading to the stars. Might these have been metaphors, or encoded recollections of an ancient link between two inhabited worlds? Were the ancients marking not spiritual duality, but physical origin points? Earth and Mars, once connected by more than just imagination? The alignment of structures like Teotihuacan with Martian orbital cycles, and the intricate celestial timing encoded into Mesopotamian ziggurats, points to a depth of planetary awareness that should not have existed at that time. And yet, it did. The Dogon's detailed knowledge of Sirius baffled modern scientists until confirmed with telescopes. Could other cultures, too, have retained cosmic wisdom passed through generations? Might this knowledge have come not from the sky in a spiritual sense, but through real ancestors whose story began on another world? The Nazca lines, only visible from high above, stretch across the Peruvian desert like a message meant for the heavens. Their geometric precision and planetary motifs invite the question: who were these designs intended for? And why would their creators go to such lengths to depict what appears to be solar system diagrams? Might they have once viewed these from orbit and encoded what they remembered into the Earth itself? Why do some ancient sites, like Stonehenge, align with planetary movements that include Mars as a key marker? Was this attention to the red planet symbolic, or was it based on historical significance, perhaps a remembrance of its lost glory? In Egypt, the symbol of the two lands is often interpreted as representing Upper and Lower Egypt, yet some scholars have noted that the motif's earliest use may predate that division. Could it have once referred to something more profound? Two worlds, not two regions? Could Earth and Mars have once been viewed as the twin seats of a single civilization? The Shen ring, A loop with a horizontal line, often shown held by deities in ancient reliefs, might represent eternity, or might it once symbolized an orbital path, a planetary connection now forgotten. From Celtic spirals that seem to mimic orbital paths, to the twin towers of ancient China's astronomical observatories, the signs are there for those willing to look. Were these cultures building more than temples and shrines? Were they building memory, preserving knowledge of a dual heritage in the only medium that could endure the rise and fall of ages? Stone? And if so, what do these symbols truly tell us? Are they warnings of what was lost, invitations to remember, or blueprints waiting to be rediscovered? If Earth's oldest monuments are repositories of memory, then perhaps we've been reading their messages with the wrong lens. Perhaps the twin discs and planetary glyphs, carved into granite and basalt, were not metaphors for gods or abstractions, but literal depictions of a past far more complex. Could we have been gazing upon the story of Mars all along, etched into Earth's surface not by chance, but by survivors who could not afford to let their origins be forgotten? Long before telescopes pointed to the heavens, ancient astronomers across the globe tracked the stars, planets, and their movements with astonishing accuracy. Stone circles, temple alignments, and detailed records reveal a level of celestial understanding that continues to puzzle modern scientists. Mars, with its red glow and shifting position in the sky, was of particular interest. From the Babylonians to the ancient Greeks, Mars was not just observed but followed in cycles, patterns, and conjunctions that required years of precise monitoring. But how did early humans, without the benefit of lenses or modern tools, manage to chart the motion of a planet millions of miles away? Babylonian clay tablets describe retrograde motion, the strange loop Mars appears to make in the night sky, a phenomenon that even today is difficult to track with the naked eye. In India, the Surya Siddhanta, a text believed to date back thousands of years, contains astronomical data so advanced that some of its figures on planetary periods align closely with modern values. Could this level of accuracy be coincidental? Or does it point to a forgotten legacy of scientific knowledge, passed down from an even older civilization? The Maya, too, calculated the synodic cycle of Mars to an astonishing degree, weaving it into their complex calendar systems and ritual observances. Were these cultures simply keen observers of the skies, or were they remembering something greater? Perhaps knowledge once common to those who lived not only on Earth, but on Mars. If a civilization did escape a dying Mars and find refuge on Earth, wouldn't one of their first tasks be to track the heavens, to keep a cosmic record of where they had come from and where they were now? Might they have taught Earth's earliest astronomers not how to guess, but how to remember? In ancient Egypt, the alignment of temples like Karnak with celestial events wasn't random. Mars was among the planets traced in their star maps, often in relation to sacred rituals that marked time and transformation. Were these practices rooted in theology, or were they part of a deeper effort to preserve planetary history? Greek astronomers, building upon Babylonian records, developed geometric models to explain planetary motion, especially Mars's curious path in the sky. While these models were not perfect, they demonstrate a sophisticated understanding that did not evolve gradually, but seemed to arrive fully formed. Could this be another case of knowledge not discovered, but inherited? In China, imperial astronomers tracked Mars and its movements in official records, often interpreting changes in its position as omens. But beyond superstition, their charts display methodical observation across centuries. How did so many cultures, separated by vast distances, converge on the same planet as an object of fascination? Was it its blood-red hue that captivated them, or was it something more, something remembered deep in cultural memory? The indigenous Australians, whose oral traditions stretch back tens of thousands of years, describe stars as ancestors and celestial paths as journeys taken long ago. Mars, too, figures into these sky stories. Could such traditions be the echoes of a time when their ancestors looked up and saw not a mystery, but a memory? How many of Earth's ancient observatories, like Newgrange in Ireland or Chanquillo in Peru, were built not just to track solstices, but to follow Mars across the heavens? And why was this planet, in particular, so important to them all? Was Mars a warning, a beacon, or perhaps a home long lost? Could the care with which its movements were tracked suggest a longing, a hope, or a fear? If a civilization once thrived on Mars and migrated to Earth, then astronomy may have been their first science, not to study the stars anew, but to preserve their origin story. Perhaps these ancient sky watchers weren't just observing, they were remembering a red world, a lost chapter, and a journey that spanned the stars. In the cold silence of space, Mars spins as a shadow of what it may once have been. Today it is a barren, rust-colored planet, stripped of surface water and wrapped in a thin veil of atmosphere. But countless theories suggest that this desolate state was not always so. Ancient Mars, scientists believe, may have once been warm, wet, and alive. Evidence from orbiters and rovers shows signs of dried riverbeds, delta formations, and minerals that only form in the presence of water. Craters and valleys shaped by flowing streams tell of a time when lakes and perhaps even oceans covered parts of the Martian surface. But if Mars once held water and a breathable sky, what could have caused it to fall into ruin? One theory points to a catastrophic loss of its magnetic field. Without this protective barrier, solar winds from the sun would have steadily stripped the planet's atmosphere, blowing it into space. Over millions of years, the air thinned, temperatures dropped, and surface water either froze or vanished. Could this slow environmental collapse have been witnessed by intelligent beings? And if so, how would they have responded to the warning signs? Some scientists suggest that Mars had all the conditions necessary for life billions of years ago. But what if it wasn't just microbial life? What if Mars once hosted a flourishing civilization, one advanced enough to predict its own demise? If they saw their skies darken, their crops fail, and their water sources dry up, would they have prepared to leave? Might they have turned their eyes to Earth, not as explorers, but as refugees? Some researchers believe the collapse of Mars may have happened in waves, triggered by internal volcanic activity, massive asteroid impacts, or long-term climate instability. If so, then the pressure to act would have built over time, giving rise to generations of thinkers, engineers, and leaders dedicated to survival. Could this have been the true origin of the sky gods in ancient myths? The last Martian elite who brought their knowledge and culture to Earth in a desperate bid to preserve what remained of their world. In Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki arrive from the heavens, bringing tools, wisdom, and laws. In Egyptian temples, celestial beings descend to shape humanity. Might these not be myths, but memories, distorted by time? Could Earth's earliest civilizations have been seeded by those who once ruled a red, dying world? The decision to leave a home planet is not made lightly. If the Martians truly fled, they would have carried with them more than just tools. They would have brought language, science, philosophy, and even genetic material. Perhaps early human leaps in knowledge weren't as sudden as they seemed, but rather sparked by contact with survivors who remembered how to build cities, chart the stars, and grow food in harsh lands. Could these memories be found today in Earth's oldest monuments, encoded in geometry and aligned with Martian cycles? The pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica, the ziggurats of Babylon, and the stone circles of Britain may not just be expressions of culture, but fingerprints of another world. And what of the ruins we continue to find on Mars itself? Pyramid-like structures, geometric patterns, and formations that defy natural explanation. Might these be remnants of cities lost to time, buried beneath dust storms and frozen crusts? Could future explorers uncover a Martian Rosetta Stone, a library beneath the ice, or a forgotten vault holding the last testament of a dying race? The end of Mars, then, is not merely a geological event. It may be the first chapter in humanity's deeper history, a tale of survival, migration, and reinvention. The ancient red planet, now silent, might once have echoed with voices, dreams, and songs. If its people did escape, their journey would not be a myth but a legacy, written across the stars and remembered in stone. And if that's true, then every time we look up at Mars, we're not just seeing a distant planet. We're looking at the birthplace of a story that may still be unfolding here on Earth. When Earth was still young, its skies clear, and its lands unscarred by cities, it may have stood as a beacon in the night for those watching from afar. If Mars once supported intelligent life, and that world began to die, Earth could have appeared as a rare salvation. Its blue oceans, thick atmosphere, and fertile ground would have offered hope to a civilization in decline. But if Martians truly came here, they did not simply land and rebuild. They adapted, blended, and quietly seeded the roots of new societies. Could this be the reason for the sudden rise of advanced culture on Earth? Throughout the ancient world, we find unexplained leaps in knowledge. The Sumerians, appearing almost overnight, brought with them laws, writing, mathematics, and city planning. In Egypt, massive stone architecture emerged with no clear evolution. In the Indus Valley, urban centers appeared with drainage systems and grid patterns. Why did these complex systems emerge with such speed? Could they be the legacy of a people who had already mastered them elsewhere? If Martian refugees arrived, they might have brought more than technology. They would have carried ideas, stories, and memories of a world that no longer existed. Did they influence Earth cultures from the shadows, guiding early humans? Or did they integrate into society, leaving behind hints of their presence in myths and monuments? Ancient legends often speak of god-kings, tall figures with glowing eyes and advanced knowledge. Could these beings have been Martian in origin, slowly transferring their wisdom to Earth's growing civilizations? If Earth was their second chance, then perhaps their greatest challenge was not just survival, but remembrance. How does one preserve the memory of a fallen world without disrupting the rise of a new one? The alignment of ancient cities with stars, the repetition of sacred symbols across continents, and the sudden understanding of astronomy and agriculture may all be part of a larger pattern, evidence not of human ingenuity alone, but of inherited knowledge. Could the deep respect for the heavens found in so many early cultures reflect a longing to remember where they came from? And if so, did the Martians see Earth not only as a refuge, but as a canvas to rewrite their civilization's story? Their legacy may be hidden in language itself, in the shared root words of ancient tongues, in the stories of skyborn ancestors, in the calendars based on planetary cycles. What if the Earth's earliest cultures were not born from isolated development, but were connected by a common thread pulled from the stars? The Martian refugees, if they existed, may have chosen Earth not only for its habitability, but for its promise. A world untouched, ready for new beginnings. And yet, how much of that beginning was shaped by the past? Could we be the descendants of a hybrid world, carrying the blood and knowledge of two planets? If Mars was a lesson in fragility, Earth may have become a second experiment, one built on hope, memory, and the will to survive. The ruins of our ancestors might be more than archaeological wonders. They might be silent testimonies to a civilization that died but did not disappear, one that chose Earth not to conquer, but to continue. In that light, perhaps our greatest monuments are not just tributes to the gods, but messages to the stars, saying, "We remember." And maybe the monuments, maps, and myths left behind are more than records. They are markers, placed carefully, waiting for a time when we are ready to rediscover our true origins. If these settlers from Mars guided early humans, they may have done so gently, ensuring that knowledge returned gradually, so as not to overwhelm, but perhaps some among them warned that even this world could fall, just as theirs had. And so, in every temple aligned with the planets, every story of the sky people, and every ritual honoring the stars, there remains a whisper, one that urges us to look beyond what we think we know, to ask deeper questions about who we are and where we truly began. Across the ancient world, carved into stones, painted on temple walls, and woven into oral tradition, appear symbols that resemble the stars. From deserts to jungles, from mountain caves to coastal tombs, these symbols show uncanny consistency. They depict constellations, planets, and celestial events with such care that it raises one question. How could so many distant civilizations describe the same sky, in the same way, at the same time? The Southern Cross, for example, a constellation only visible from the southern hemisphere, appears in places where its visibility would have been limited or even impossible. Engraved in temples, painted on ceramics, and mirrored in ground formations. How did these ancient peoples know of it? And why did they preserve its image with such reverence? Could it have been more than a navigational tool? Perhaps it was a memory, a symbol from a previous world, used as a cosmic signpost by those who once traveled between planets. Were the stars a map, not of seas and continents, but of space itself? And if so, who were the original star map readers? The Sumerians tracked Venus and Mars with stunning precision. Egyptians aligned their pyramids with Orion's belt. The Dogon people of Mali held knowledge of Sirius B, a star invisible without telescopes. How did they know? These constellations and celestial markers often appear alongside symbols of flight, wings, disks, boats that float not on water, but on light. Were they telling the story of a journey taken long ago, from one world to another, guided by stars remembered from a Martian sky? Could the familiarity of certain star groupings reflect the view once seen from another planet, written down and carried across the void? Perhaps what we interpret as zodiac signs or mythical figures are actually the remnants of a Martian navigational system, encoded in the shapes of the heavens. Why do similar sky stories appear in cultures that had no contact? Why do the Pleiades, Orion, and Sirius dominate so many ancient mythologies? If these celestial bodies held special meaning to travelers from Mars, then it would make sense for them to be passed down through generations, embedded into ceremony, architecture, and lore. The symbols are not only in the sky, they're in us. They guide rituals, mark seasons, and define destinies. But what if their original purpose was to guide ships, not souls? The Nazca lines in Peru, with their immense, precise shapes, align with star paths and planetary positions. Were they terrestrial reminders of celestial coordinates? Markers for those looking back toward the stars they once called home. Across Australia, Aboriginal star maps mirror those of South America and Africa, raising the question of a common source. Could that source have been an ancient civilization that traveled through the stars and taught Earth's earliest peoples to remember the sky, not as something to worship, but as something to follow? These recurring patterns may not be coincidence. They may be evidence. Could we be misreading star charts as myths, and myths as mere stories? What if, instead, they are survival manuals, written in symbols, designed to last until memory fades and rediscovery begins? And if those who fled Mars needed a way to remember where they had come from and how to return, what better method than to draw their paths in the stars for all time? Even the megalithic observatories like Stonehenge and Nabta Playa show alignments that track solar and lunar movements with extraordinary accuracy. Could such structures also act as repositories of cosmic knowledge, their stone arrangements reflecting not only Earth's skies but positions once familiar on another world? If Martian survivors wanted to embed their knowledge across multiple cultures, they may have used the one canvas everyone shares, the heavens. After all, while language and customs differ, the stars remain the same. Their configurations, positions, and patterns can transcend generations and geography. And if these patterns served as a code, one scattered like seeds across Earth's surface, perhaps it is time we began to reassemble them. What new understanding might emerge if we viewed the constellations not as symbols of deities or animals, but as coordinates, markers left by those who once crossed the stars and hoped one day we would follow? Throughout the earliest chapters of human history, great civilizations emerged with knowledge that seemed to arrive fully formed. In Mesopotamia, complex mathematics, standardized weights, and accurate calendars appeared with no clear period of development. In Egypt, monumental architecture like the Great Pyramid was constructed with precision that even modern tools struggle to replicate. In Mesoamerica, astronomers tracked planets, predicted eclipses, and built cities aligned to solstices and equinoxes. How did these societies acquire such advanced understanding so early in their existence? Could this knowledge have been inherited from another world? If Mars once hosted a civilization that fell to ruin, it's possible that its survivors brought their most vital skills with them. What would a people on the brink of planetary extinction choose to save? Likely not gold or art, but knowledge, blueprints, equations, and cosmic wisdom. Could the preserved star charts found in early tombs be relics from this earlier age, encoded to survive the passage of time? In ancient India, texts described flying machines and precise time cycles. In China, early astronomers mapped planetary motions with uncanny accuracy. In the Andes, stonework with interlocking precision resisted both time and earthquakes. Were these abilities rediscovered through inspiration or remembered from a distant past? The Sumerians divided the sky into degrees and hours, and their base 6-0 system is still used in modern timekeeping. Why such a system? And why so suddenly? Could it have been imported from a civilization that had already measured the stars for thousands of years? What if the reason we find ancient artifacts beyond their expected technological level is because they weren't invented here? They were carried here. Stone spheres in Costa Rica, the Antikythera mechanism in Greece, and the Baghdad battery all raise questions about the real origins of knowledge. Might these items be echoes of forgotten tools, adapted from technology once used in another world? The symmetry in mathematics, embedded in sacred geometry across ancient sites, suggest a unified system of thinking. The same angles, ratios, and alignments show up in places with no known contact. Could this point to a single origin, a Martian framework preserved and passed on? These survivors would have had reason to hide their roots. Integrating into a new planet, they may have chosen to share their knowledge slowly, ensuring it could grow again without resistance or fear. Could early priesthoods and elite classes have been the custodians of this interplanetary legacy? If so, what secrets were encoded in temples, scrolls, and oral traditions, waiting for future generations to uncover? And why do so many ancient texts reference golden ages, sky visitors, and knowledge given from above? If Mars collapsed, its survivors would have understood the value of memory. Perhaps their greatest gift to Earth was not their tools, but the ability to remember, to rebuild, and to avoid the same fate. What other fragments of their knowledge remain hidden in plain sight, in myths dismissed as legend, or in ruins yet to be fully understood? If what we call ancient genius is actually ancient memory, then maybe the civilizations that rose across Earth were not inventing new ideas, but reviving what was nearly lost forever. Even more curious is the consistency of mathematical constants across time and continents. The golden ratio appears in architecture from Greece to the Americas, and pi seems embedded in pyramid proportions. How did cultures with no recorded contact all tap into the same formulas? Could these be remnants of a shared schooling? The lessons of a once great scientific tradition, brought by those fleeing disaster? And what if these ideas weren't just practical, but also philosophical, intended not just to measure the world, but to harmonize with it? The Martian survivors may have seen knowledge not only as a survival tool, but as a sacred inheritance. In every calendar, observatory, and coded temple, they may have placed the keys to a forgotten age, trusting that someday, someone would unlock them. If humanity's earliest intellectual leaps were guided by beings from another world, then the story of civilization is not one of sudden brilliance, but of careful remembering, guided by those who once called a different sky home. On the dusty plains of Mars, in a region known as Cydonia, satellite imagery revealed strange formations that sparked global curiosity. Among the most discussed was a large shape resembling a human face, but surrounding this enigmatic figure were other geometric structures, mounds arranged in patterns that seemed far too deliberate to be natural. Some researchers argued that these formations bore a striking resemblance to the layout of the Great Pyramids at Giza, as if two sites, separated by millions of miles and an ocean of time, had been crafted by minds sharing the same blueprint. Could this similarity be mere coincidence, or might it hint at a shared legacy that reaches back to a time when Mars and Earth were intimately connected? The pyramids on Earth are aligned with astonishing precision to cardinal directions and celestial bodies, particularly the stars of Orion's belt. In Cydonia, a similar triangular pattern has been observed in the alignment of pyramid-like mounds. Could both sets have been constructed using a universal system of measurement rooted not in cultural preference, but in cosmic constants? If so, who designed such a system? And why did they build it to endure across two worlds? The Egyptian cubit, a unit of measure derived from the human body, may have a counterpart encoded in Martian geometry. Some theorists propose that the distances and angles in Cydonia mirror the proportions used in ancient Egyptian architecture. Could this suggest a mathematical language carried across the stars? A sacred geometry known to a lost civilization? If the builders of Giza were descendants of Martian refugees, then perhaps the pyramids served not only spiritual purposes, but also as memorials of a home that no longer existed. What if the face on Mars, now softened by years of scientific scrutiny, once stood as a monument to that vanished world, its expression a message to any who followed? Critics argue these similarities are products of pattern recognition, illusions born of our desire to find meaning. Yet the recurring nature of these alignments, proportions, and architectural principles across both sites continues to challenge coincidence. Were these sites part of a larger planetary blueprint, a mirrored set of temples designed to encode knowledge in stone? If so, what were they meant to preserve, and for whom? Legends surrounding the construction of the Egyptian pyramids speak of divine knowledge, sky beings, and builders who were more than human. Could these be distorted memories of Martian ancestors, passed down through generations? Might the layout of Cydonia have been their first design, recreated on Earth as a way to keep that knowledge alive? The pyramid's function has long been debated. Tombs, observatories, power stations, or stargates. If they were intended as multi-purpose structures, combining spiritual, astronomical, and technological roles, then perhaps they originated in a place where survival required such innovation. Could Mars have once needed structures that tracked the stars, focused energy, and communicated across great distances? And if so, did the refugees from that world bring this idea with them, building on Earth what had once sustained them on Mars? The mirrored layout between Giza and Cydonia may not be an isolated occurrence. Other pyramidal structures on Earth, those in China, Bosnia, and Mesoamerica, show similar angles, alignments, and mathematical encoding. Are these part of a broader legacy, scattered like fragments of a lost civilization's memory? Were the pyramid builders of Earth drawing from a forgotten tradition, one older than recorded history, one rooted in a world that perished? Could the answer lie not in geology, but in memory, ancient, planetary memory, waiting to be decoded? If the same minds, or their descendants, built both Cydonia and Giza, then the story of human civilization begins not on Earth, but among the red dust and ancient winds of Mars. For those who believe Earth and Mars once shared a connection, one haunting question lingers. Why is there so little direct evidence? If ancient civilizations truly bridged the gap between the two worlds, where are the tools, the texts, the unmistakable remnants of Martian origin? The answer, some suggest, lies not in what is present, but in what has vanished. Mars is a planet battered by time. Its thin atmosphere offers little protection from space radiation, and its surface is endlessly scoured by dust storms that can engulf the planet and last for weeks. These harsh conditions erode everything, softening even the most rigid shapes. Structures once towering might now be hidden beneath layers of wind-blown sand, their outlines blurred and their details erased. What if the remnants of Martian cities lie just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered by future exploration? Meanwhile, Earth's surface is no friend to ancient memory. Earthquakes, volcanic activity, floods, and shifting climates have all played their part in burying or destroying what once was. Entire cultures have disappeared beneath jungles and oceans. Artifacts that could have told of cosmic origins may have decayed or disintegrated over time. What if the traces of interplanetary travelers have already been found, but not recognized for what they truly were? In some cases, it's not just nature but secrecy that may have concealed the past. Ancient texts speak of knowledge kept only for the initiated, hidden temples, secret chambers, and forbidden scrolls. Could some of these have held accounts of a Martian origin, passed down in symbolic language, never meant for the public eye? And what about the great losses of knowledge, such as the burning of the Library of Alexandria? That single tragedy may have destroyed records gathered from across the ancient world. Could scrolls describing planetary migrations, sky voyages, or star maps from Mars have gone up in flames, lost to war and neglect? In more recent history, there have been whispers of discoveries made and then dismissed, locked away in private collections or lost in bureaucratic silence. Photographs from Mars that show patterns resembling artificial structures are often attributed to natural processes. Yet many still wonder, could the drive to preserve accepted scientific narratives overshadow the pursuit of deeper truths? Might institutions, intentionally or not, resist revisiting theories that challenge long-standing assumptions? Even when evidence is found, interpretation shapes belief. A strange artifact might be dismissed as ceremonial rather than functional. A ruin labeled symbolic rather than technological. Could it be that the evidence of a Mars-Earth link is not missing, but misread? And if so, how much of our understanding of ancient history rests on assumptions waiting to be overturned? There is also the possibility that the Martian refugees themselves had reasons to erase their tracks. Integration into Earth's early civilizations may have required secrecy. Perhaps they chose not to reveal their origins, blending into local cultures and disguising their knowledge as divine inspiration. Could the stories of sky gods and culture bringers be the cloaked memories of real events, shaped into legend to protect both the messengers and their mission? As we refine our tools, the search continues. Satellite archaeology is revealing forgotten cities beneath sand and forest. On Mars, high-resolution imaging may one day expose clearer signs of ancient construction. Rovers might stumble across the eroded remains of a wall, a doorway, or a tool half buried in crimson soil. What will we think when we see it? Will we be ready to recognize the truth if it defies what we expect? The vanishing evidence does not mean the connection never existed. It may simply mean it has not yet been fully revealed. In a universe where time swallows memory and dust covers stone, the most profound truths often lie just beneath the surface. They endure not in plain sight, but in fragments, in whispers, in the symbols carved into forgotten ruins, and the myths passed down through generations. Perhaps, one day, the silence of the past will break, and what was hidden will be seen for what it truly is. Across the ancient world, from the high plateaus of the Andes to the fertile valleys of Mesopotamia, stories have been passed down through generations of powerful beings who came from the sky. These beings, often described with flames in their wake and glowing robes the color of fire, carried knowledge and power far beyond the understanding of the people who witnessed their arrival. In cultures separated by oceans and mountains, a curious pattern appears. References to red gods or fire lords, divine figures cloaked in heat and light. But what if these descriptions weren't simply symbolic? What if they were literal attempts to describe visitors who arrived not from the heavens in a spiritual sense, but from a neighboring planet whose surface once burned red under a thinning sky? Mars. The Hopi of North America tell of the red Kachina, a celestial being whose return would mark great change. In Hindu tradition, Agni, the fire god, is both a destroyer and a link between humans and the divine. In Mesoamerican myth, deities like Quetzalcoatl descend to earth in glowing, fiery forms, often described as falling stars or serpents trailing flame. Could these fire beings have been the last remnants of a Martian race, forced to abandon their home as it became uninhabitable? If early Earth civilizations encountered travelers whose appearance was shaped by re-entry into the atmosphere, shimmering heat, bright descent, roaring sound, might they have recorded the event in the language of myth, calling them fire gods or red lords? What if these visitors were not gods at all, but interplanetary survivors seeking refuge on a young Earth? Throughout African traditions, stories speak of beings who came wrapped in fire or red metal, bringing with them tools, calendars, and the stars. Among the Yoruba, the Orisha descended in fire and lightning. In China, dragons, long associated with fire and cosmic wisdom, were said to come from the stars. In Polynesian cultures, red star ancestors traveled by canoe from fiery skies, shaping the lands and guiding their people. Could all of these distant echoes be memories of the same event? A migration from a red world, encoded in different languages and symbols? Mars, known even to the ancients as the Red Planet, was often linked with war and upheaval. But what if it was not merely symbolic? Could the planet's transformation from a once habitable world to a dry, barren one have been the very event that pushed its people to flee? If the gods of flame were once Martians, their divine wrath might have been the technological signatures of their arrival. Heat shields glowing, engines burning, shockwaves rippling through the air. Might these have inspired stories of punishment from the heavens or celestial battles? And if so, who wrote these legends? The Earthborn witnesses or the Martian newcomers themselves, trying to preserve the record of their escape? Sacred architecture often honors these sky visitors. Temples, pyramids, and stone circles align with Mars during specific times of the year. In Egypt, the god Set was not only associated with chaos, but also with the red planet, feared and revered. In Sumer, Nergal ruled the underworld and carried the destructive fire of Mars. These are not random links. They are breadcrumbs pointing to a deeper origin, a truth long forgotten. Could the red gods be misunderstood ancestors, remembered in fire because fire marked their journey? Might the stories of divine punishment be memories of planetary catastrophe, filtered through time and fear? If the sky people were once Martians, their stories have been fragmented into divine myths, but the core message may still remain. They came during a time of great need, shaped early civilizations, and perhaps even warned of what happens when a planet turns against its inhabitants. Their fire was not divine wrath, but the trail of their salvation. If we re-examine these myths not as fantasy but as encrypted history, then the red sky may have been more than a backdrop. It may have been the beginning of our oldest story. Scattered across the ruins of Earth's oldest civilizations are tools and techniques that defy modern understanding. From impossibly precise stonework to artifacts resembling energy devices, these relics raise questions about the origins of such knowledge. Were these not inventions of isolated human brilliance, but remnants of a technological legacy brought from Mars? In ancient Indian texts, flying machines called vimanas are described in extraordinary detail, including their materials, propulsion systems, and aerial maneuvers. These accounts, far too advanced to be dismissed as metaphor, hint at a memory of flight not rediscovered until thousands of years later. In Egypt, within the Temple of Dendera, carvings show objects resembling electric lights and conductors, surrounded by figures performing ritualistic acts. The so-called Baghdad battery, a clay pot with a copper cylinder and iron rod, produces voltage when filled with an acidic liquid. Could these devices have been part of a broader knowledge system? One brought to Earth from a distant world, now silent and lifeless? High in the Andes, the massive stones of Sacsayhuaman fit so tightly together that not even a blade of grass can pass between them. No known ancient tools could have achieved such precision. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, stone blocks appear machined, featuring complex grooves and interlocking joints. How did civilizations with no written language or metal tools create such structures? Some believe these capabilities reflect the survival of Martian engineering, passed down by refugees who once carved cities into the red stone of another world. On the plains of Peru, the Nazca lines stretch for miles, their shapes only visible from the sky. Their true purpose remains debated. Some say religious, others astronomical. But what if they were navigational aids for aerial visitors? Were they visual signals left by Earth's early inhabitants to communicate with skyborne travelers? Could they have been a form of ground-based interface with ships descending from orbit? Perhaps echoing systems once used on Mars. Even more puzzling are ancient accounts of sound used to levitate objects. Tibetan monks are said to have moved large stones using drums and horns. Stories persist of tools of light and beams that could shape or cut stone. These descriptions sound far-fetched, but might they be misremembered depictions of advanced Martian tools, able to manipulate matter through energy or vibration? If such tools ever existed, their remnants may have been lost to time or hidden. In some sacred sites, designs suggest more than spiritual purpose. The Great Pyramid's inner chambers resonate at specific frequencies, and its dimensions encode planetary and mathematical constants. Could it have been built with more than symbolic intention? Was it a machine, a transmitter, a stabilizer, or a vault for knowledge too precious to lose? If so, who gave its builders such purpose? And from where did they come? Ancient legends often describe beings who descended from the sky, bringing the gifts of measurement, agriculture, medicine, and law. These sudden leaps in development, especially in isolated regions, suggest an outside influence. Could Martian survivors have chosen specific locations to settle, sharing their knowledge while adapting to Earth's conditions? And if they did they also choose to cloak their tools in mystery, embedding them in temples and myths to preserve them through time? Today, researchers continue to uncover strange artifacts buried beneath centuries of earth and stone. Some are dismissed, others quietly archived, their implications too great or too disruptive. But what if we've already found pieces of Martian technology, misidentified as ritual objects, ceremonial carvings, or simple curiosities? Could our own museums house the keys to understanding not only our history, but our interplanetary ancestry? The loss of ancient technology might not be due to time alone. It might be due to design. Perhaps these tools required materials no longer available, or energies no longer accessible. Or perhaps their makers chose to let them fade, believing that Earth's future should not depend on Martian pasts. Still, the echoes remain. In ancient blueprints carved into stone, in myths of flying chariots and gods with luminous tools, in the unexplained brilliance of structures that refuse to yield their secrets. If we begin to ask not just how, but why these things appear, why they are consistent across the globe, and why they vanish so suddenly, then we may begin to see the shape of a story long buried. A story not of lost gods, but of a lost people, bringing their last knowledge across space in hopes that it would survive. The deepest secrets of humanity may not lie only in ancient ruins or lost myths, but within us, in the very code of life that defines who we are. For decades, scientists have puzzled over aspects of human DNA that defy simple explanation. Among the 3 billion base pairs that make up our genetic blueprint, nearly half serves no clear biological function. Labeled as junk DNA, these vast stretches remain silent and mysterious. But what if this portion of our genome is not random or useless? What if it is a remnant of something ancient, foreign, and cosmic? A message from another world embedded in our very being. Some researchers have proposed that anomalies within our DNA hint at a form of external tampering, a moment in the distant past when human evolution took an unexpected leap. This idea, once dismissed as science fiction, now finds echoes in our increasing understanding of genetics. Could Martian survivors, fleeing a dying world, have shared their genetic knowledge with early humans? Might they have inserted strands of their own DNA into ours, either to pass on knowledge, improve survival, or maintain a connection to their lost home? The rapid expansion of human intelligence remains a mystery. In an incredibly short span of evolutionary time, Homo sapiens developed abstract reasoning, complex language, and cultural expression. No other species evolved with such speed. Could this sudden shift have been guided, rather than natural? Ancient creation stories from across the globe tell of beings who shaped humans from clay, breathed life into them, or altered them to make them more capable. The Sumerians wrote of the Anunnaki, sky visitors who fashioned humans to serve and learn. Could these be echoes of an ancient genetic encounter, one that forever changed the course of our species? In examining human DNA, scientists have found genes that appear to be inserted rather than inherited. Some of these genes do not follow the expected evolutionary paths. They arrive fully formed, as if added deliberately. Could these insertions represent attempts by Martian exiles to adapt us, to guide us, or to preserve something of themselves within a new world? If so, could our so-called junk DNA be more than unused code? Might it be a dormant library, waiting for the right moment, or knowledge, to be unlocked? There are legends of bloodlines said to be divine, or different. Egyptian pharaohs claimed descent from the stars. The Dogon of Mali speak of beings who came from the Sirius system and gifted them astronomical wisdom. Could some families carry a higher concentration of Martian traits, preserved through selective unions and oral traditions? Might this explain the recurring theme of rulers who were both human and god, both flesh and flame? In recent years, geneticists have uncovered segments in mitochondrial DNA, passed down through the maternal line, that contain sequences not easily traced to any known earthly origin. Though mainstream science remains cautious, some have speculated that these fragments could represent ancient alien influence. And what of our deep instinct to look to the stars? Our myths, technologies, and dreams are filled with longing for other worlds. Could this yearning be more than curiosity? Could it be memory? Echoes of a past life lived under a red sky? If our ancestors once walked on Martian soil, could that drive to explore space, to reach for Mars in particular, be a biological imperative written into us long ago? Across cultures, people have spoken of visitors who came from the stars not to conquer, but to teach, to seed knowledge, and to ensure survival. These were not destroyers, but caretakers. If true, then Earth may not be our sole cradle, but part of a greater plan, a continuation of a civilization, refusing to fade with the loss of its original home. Our DNA, then, is more than a record of earthly life. It could be the last surviving vessel of Martian legacy, carrying their history, their strength, and their hope into a future they would never see. What other secrets lie in our genes, waiting to be translated? What codes sleep within us, misread or ignored, calling us back to the stars? The key to our true history may not lie in ancient stone or distant planets, but in the cells of our own bodies, where the past and future meet in silence. When Plato wrote of Atlantis, he described a grand civilization, technologically advanced, morally complex, and ultimately doomed. This tale, often dismissed as allegory, has fascinated generations of seekers, scholars, and dreamers. But what if Atlantis was not merely a cautionary fable, nor an island that sank beneath the sea, but something far more cosmic? What if the story preserved in Plato's writings was not just a memory of an earthbound empire, but a faint echo of a Martian one? The descriptions of Atlantis, a circular city built with precise geometry, rich in metals, protected by advanced structures, and destroyed in a sudden cataclysm, bear an eerie resemblance to some of the strange formations on Mars, particularly in the Cydonia region. These formations appear not only symmetrical, but intelligent in their layout, as if remnants of urban planning. Could Plato's account, passed down from Egyptian priests to Solon and finally to him, be a retelling of a much older story, preserved across planets and generations? The Atlanteans, in Plato's words, descended into corruption before their fall. Mars, too, bears the scars of destruction: massive canyons, collapsed crusts, and radiation-blasted landscapes that hint at a catastrophic past. What force could have shattered such a world? Was it war, natural disaster, or self-inflicted ruin? And did the survivors of that collapse flee across the void, their story eventually filtering down to Earth as legend? Many ancient cultures speak of lost lands: Lemuria, Mu, and others. Might these all be fragments of a single, shared memory, an ancestral echo not of Earth alone, but of a society that once thrived under a different sun? Could Atlantis have been a Martian capital, its image carried across space and time, only to be transformed into myth as generations passed? The city's circular design, so unlike the organic layouts of most ancient Earth cities, may point to foreign origin. Mars's surface shows signs of artificial symmetry, structures aligned with celestial coordinates, patterns too regular to be random. Could these have been the model for what we now call Atlantis? And if survivors from that red empire came to Earth, might they have tried to rebuild what they had lost, only to fail again in the face of new challenges? The story of Atlantis ends with a flood, a deluge that swallowed a civilization whole. Ancient Mars is believed to have once had oceans, lakes, and rivers, bodies of water that vanished as the planet's atmosphere thinned. Could the Atlantean flood be a confused memory of Mars's final days? A great climate collapse, rendered in earthly terms for human ears to understand? If so, then the myth is not about a lost continent, but a lost world. Plato wrote that Atlantis existed over 9,000 years before his time. Such a date is far older than most accepted timelines for advanced Earth civilizations. But it may fit better if the original Atlantis lay not on Earth at all. What if the legend of Atlantis is a cultural fossil, an impression left by Martian refugees trying to preserve their story in a way early Earth societies could grasp? Temples built in their honor, stories repeated over fires and stone tablets, visions of a golden age that ended in fire and water. And over millennia, the truth softened, reshaped into metaphor and mystery. Could the memory of an interplanetary migration, once crystal clear, have been reduced to a myth about a sunken island? If Mars was the first cradle and Earth the second, then Atlantis may represent the bridge between them, the memory of what was lost and the warning of what could happen again. Are we, like the Atlanteans, approaching a similar crossroad? One where knowledge, power, and pride must be balanced or face collapse? The clues are there, scattered in old texts, on red landscapes, and in our longing for forgotten wisdom. Perhaps Atlantis was not a place, but a symbol of something greater, a civilization that spanned worlds, fell to ruin, and left behind only whispers in stone and sky. And maybe, just maybe, the echoes of Atlantis are not behind us, but still ahead, waiting for the moment when we remember enough to begin the search again, not for a lost city beneath the sea, but for the truth among the stars. Throughout the ages, there have been whispers of scrolls, tablets, and books locked away in hidden chambers beneath temples, guarded not just by stone, but by secrecy. These texts, often dismissed as legend or conspiracy, are said to hold truths too powerful, too transformative, or too dangerous for the public eye. But what if these forbidden writings are not merely spiritual or symbolic in nature? What if they contain the key to understanding an ancient relationship between Mars and Earth, one long buried by the sands of time and protected by generations of secrecy? In ancient Egypt, priests of the highest order were said to possess scrolls older than the pharaohs themselves, safeguarded within the walls of the Temple of Thoth. These scrolls were rumored to contain cosmic histories and sacred sciences passed down by gods who came from the stars. But what if these gods were not divine beings, but survivors of a Martian exodus, refugees who chronicled their origins and their journey in a language Earth was only just beginning to comprehend? Could the writings hidden beneath Egypt's ancient stones reveal the tale of a civilization that once thrived under a red sky and found its second home here on Earth? The Vatican's secret archives, perhaps the most famous collection of restricted texts in the modern world, have also drawn intrigue for centuries. Reports from those who have briefly accessed the archives speak of ancient documents detailing star visitors, planetary migrations, and even pre-Christian records, hinting at beings who walked among humans, but came from another world. Could the Vatican possess fragments of a greater cosmic story, hidden to preserve power or to shield humanity from truths it is not yet ready to face? Secret societies such as the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, and Freemasons have long been associated with the guardianship of hidden knowledge. Their symbols often reference stars, celestial alignments, and dual worlds. Might these be encoded references to the Martian-Earth connection, passed down through rituals and oaths? The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which speak of the gods who came from the heavens and taught mankind before returning to the stars, suggest a deeper origin. Could these tablets, long linked to alchemy and metaphysics, actually preserve the scientific and historical accounts of a Martian people who shaped human destiny? And what of the Book of Enoch, which tells of the Watchers, celestial beings who descended to Earth, taught forbidden knowledge, and altered the course of humanity? Were these Watchers not mythic angels, but ancient astronomers and scientists fleeing planetary collapse? Were their teachings, preserved in secret texts, efforts to rebuild what was lost on Earth after Mars became uninhabitable? In India, ancient palm leaf manuscripts contain stunning astronomical knowledge, surgical techniques, and flying machines known as vimanas. Some of these texts speak of battles in the skies, migrations through the heavens, and red stars that brought both destruction and wisdom. Could these manuscripts hold echoes of Martian science, hidden in allegory and poetic verse? And if so, who decided to conceal them from the modern world? Might there be knowledge in these writings capable of unlocking not only our history, but our potential? Across the Himalayas and Andes, in hidden monasteries and cliffside libraries, there are tales of sealed vaults and forgotten records. What if these vaults contain more than just religious texts? What if they hold journals of ancient travelers, logs of Martian engineers, or blueprints of technology we no longer recognize? And what role have modern governments played in keeping these records hidden? Have discoveries already been made, scrolls unearthed, tablets decoded, only to be locked away to maintain the illusion of a singular human origin? Could the greatest revelation in history be lying beneath our feet, unseen and unread? The recurring theme is this: the most sacred and forbidden writings throughout history speak not only of Earth, but of the stars, of visitors who came, guided, and left behind messages in ink, stone, and silence. If the Earth was a new beginning, then these scrolls are the memory of what came before, a memory protected by secrecy and perhaps fear. What happens when humanity rediscovers these messages? What doors might they open? And what stories will they tell about who we really are and where we truly came from? Across the farthest reaches of Earth, from the icy deserts of Antarctica to the jagged highlands of Tibet, stand monuments that defy easy explanation. Carved from stone, placed with eerie precision, and often oriented toward stars or solstices, these ancient structures have long been assumed to be ceremonial or religious in nature. But what if they served another purpose? What if these silent witnesses scattered across the globe are not simply relics of forgotten cultures, but markers, beacons, left behind by beings who once walked on another world? Could they be the legacy of the last Martians, survivors of a world turned to dust, who left clues not only in the stars but in stone, to guide the children of Earth back to the truth of their shared origin? Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey challenge conventional timelines with carvings dating back to over 12,000 years ago, far earlier than expected for complex societies. The site's alignment with celestial bodies, including those associated with Mars, has sparked speculation. Were these alignments intentional? Were they a remembrance of the red sky once seen from a different planet? Why would hunter-gatherers create monuments that required such planning, unless they were following inherited knowledge? On Easter Island, the Moai stand like guardians, their eyes once believed to glow with coral. Many researchers have pointed out their peculiar features. elongated heads, large eyes, and expressions of timeless solemnity. Could these statues be modeled after beings not born of Earth, or perhaps of ancestors whose roots began far beyond the Pacific horizon? And buried deep beneath their bases, archaeologists have uncovered more than just torsos, potentially clues to rituals or knowledge long lost. In remote regions of Russia's Ural Mountains, megaliths weighing hundreds of tons have been found stacked with precision. Their purpose is unknown, but their existence raises the question: who built these, and how? Could these stones have once been lodestones of memory? Points on a map linking Earth's power sites to patterns once etched across Mars. In the Andes, Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman feature stones so precisely cut they fit together without mortar, resisting earthquakes and time itself. Why such perfection? Unless the builders were following templates carried with them from another world. The mystery deepens beneath the oceans. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument suggests a sunken structure with terraces, steps, and right angles uncommon in natural formations. Might this have been a ceremonial site mimicking Martian design, now lost beneath rising seas? What inspired such shapes, if not memory or survival? The Nazca lines in Peru, stretching across the desert, depict animals, spirals, and long runways, only visible from above. Were these messages to the stars, signs of remembrance, or coordinates left behind for those who might one day return? And if so, why have we ignored the possibility that these were meant for Martian eyes, or those who descended from them? In the Arctic, ground-penetrating radar has identified geometrical patterns beneath thick ice layers. While still unexcavated, these shapes resemble the early foundations of settlements, yet they are located in areas supposedly uninhabitable until recent times. Could these be the remnants of knowledge seeded by the last of the Martians, who found sanctuary in Earth's most isolated corners? And if they are, what do they contain? Across continents, many of these monuments align with constellations: Orion, Sirius, and most notably, with Mars. These are not random constructions. They are part of a forgotten system, a global blueprint. What if this blueprint extends beyond our planet, reflecting a once integrated civilization that mapped both Earth and Mars using the same celestial compass? The silence of stone does not mean absence of message. The builders may be gone, but their design speaks. Could these monuments be part of a grand celestial archive, waiting for a species wise enough to decipher its meaning? Are we that species now? Or will these stones continue to stand in mute testimony to a truth yet uncovered? The last Martians may not have shouted their warnings. Instead, they may have carved their memories into rock, aligned them with stars, and entrusted the Earth itself to remember when we could not. These silent witnesses are more than ruins. They are echoes, markers, and guides, left not by myth, but by memory. In every corner of the ancient world, from the towering ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the step temples of Mesoamerica, humanity has built its monuments in conversation with the sky. Temples, pyramids, and sacred sites were often designed with an almost obsessive precision, aligned not randomly, but with specific celestial bodies and movements. Among these, star alignments stand out, fixed patterns that seem to point to something beyond simple stargazing. But what if these alignments weren't just agricultural tools or religious symbols? What if they were coded messages left by those who remembered another sky? A sky once seen from Mars. Could these structures have served as interplanetary lighthouses, their spires and pathways angled to honor the orbit of a distant home? Or perhaps as markers predicting when descendants or distant kin might return? In ancient Egypt, the Great Pyramids of Giza align precisely with Orion's belt, a constellation that held deep significance in their cosmology. Orion, associated with the god Osiris, was seen as a gateway to the afterlife, but could it also have marked the direction of a Martian trajectory? Might the pyramid builders have inherited knowledge of celestial mechanics from beings who once watched Orion from another vantage point? The temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia mirror the Draco constellation, and in Mexico, the layout of Teotihuacan reflects the Pleiades. These aren't isolated cases. Rather, they form a global pattern that implies a shared understanding, one that predates known contact between these cultures. Could this shared knowledge have originated from a single source? Martian refugees who encoded their memory into stone, using stars as their language. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats were stairways to the heavens, and many were aligned with Mars at key times of the year. Was this intentional? If these ancient architects were working from inherited blueprints, might those blueprints have come from a civilization that once lived under a red sky? Did they design their temples to mirror the skies of their origin, preserving not only their past, but their hopes of reunion? The Hopi and Navajo speak of star people who taught them the meaning of constellations, and the Dogon of Mali possess astonishing knowledge of Sirius and its invisible companion star. How did these cultures, separated by oceans and time, come to know so much about the heavens? Could they have been taught by those who came from beyond, and who used stars as memory anchors? And why do so many of these alignments correspond not only to earthly cycles, but to the orbital patterns of Mars? In Peru, the ancient site of Chanquillo is recognized as the oldest solar observatory in the Americas. Its 13 towers allow observers to track the sun's movements throughout the year. Yet some of its alignments are curious, falling just outside of solar logic. Could these deviations point to a planetary calendar different from Earth's, a calendar rooted in Martian seasons? What if these were reminders of a home left behind, with time tracked not by Earth's sun alone, but by memories of a twin planetary clock? Across Greece and India, mythologies tell of gods descending during celestial alignments, returning during rare conjunctions. Were these tales based on cycles of travel, of return, perhaps even of a mission that spanned centuries? What if ancient people knew that those who left Mars intended to return once the skies aligned again? Could temples and observatories have been constructed to count down to such an event? Some researchers believe that alignments across global monuments create geodetic lines, an invisible web, wrapping Earth, connecting temples to one another, and to space. If this is true, might the original architects have encoded not just spatial messages, but temporal ones too? Were they trying to tell future generations where to look, and when? If knowledge of Mars and its position in the solar system survived in early myths, then the stars may be more than a cosmic backdrop. They may be a repository of messages, their positions and patterns, holding clues to who we are and where we began. The builders of these ancient temples may not have spoken our languages, but they spoke the language of light, time, and space. They etched their messages not into books that could burn, but into the very bones of the earth, facing the sky. Perhaps they hoped that when we finally learned to look up again, not just with eyes, but with understanding, we'd remember that long ago, someone came, and one day, perhaps, someone will return. Beneath the polished floors and marbled halls of Vatican City lies a vault few are allowed to enter. Known as the Vatican Apostolic Archive, it stretches over miles of shelving and contains countless documents, letters, maps, scrolls, and books, some of which have remained untouched for centuries. Many believe these hidden pages may tell stories far stranger than those found in any holy text. Could it be that among the ancient parchments and forbidden tomes are records of lands not of this earth, places beyond the sky as described in lost languages? For generations, Rumors have swirled that the church collected more than sacred scripture. It collected knowledge too powerful or too disorienting for the public to bear. If a link between Mars and Earth had ever been discovered, would the Vatican not have seen it as a dangerous truth, one that must be locked away? There are whispers of papal correspondences discussing beings of light who descended from the heavens, of secret councils convened to decide how much of the ancient world's wisdom should be shared. Could some of these meetings have addressed knowledge of a Martian civilization? As early as the 12th century, certain texts mention the Watchers of the Sky and Builders from Beyond, language that echoes Sumerian and Egyptian accounts of sky gods. Is it possible that the Church had access to older texts, perhaps brought from the East during the Crusades, that spoke plainly of beings who came from the stars? Some believe the Knights Templar, upon excavating the ruins beneath Solomon's temple, uncovered scrolls that hinted at humanity's origins far beyond Earth. If those scrolls were real, might they now sit sealed in the Vatican's subterranean corridors? The Vatican Observatory, maintained even during times of scientific upheaval, has puzzled many. Why such interest in planetary motion from an institution so firmly rooted in theology? Could it be that the Church never stopped watching the sky, not for spiritual revelation, but for signs of a returning presence? Perhaps some within the highest ranks believed that one day, those who came from Mars would return. Historical accounts tell of Church scholars studying star charts with an intensity that surpassed simple curiosity. Might they have been decoding signals, patterns, or celestial alignments meant to guide the reappearance of those who left long ago? In the Renaissance, access to rare manuscripts was tightly controlled. Stories that touched on planetary origins or visitors from the stars were often labeled heresy. But were they suppressed because they conflicted with doctrine, or because they revealed too much truth? If knowledge of humanity's shared past with Mars existed, revealing it might have unraveled the foundation upon which the Church built its influence. The implications would have been profound. The idea that gods were not divine, but ancestral travelers, and that sacred temples were echoes of Martian memory. Some apocryphal texts, never included in the canon, speak of cities of fire in the firmament and of wanderers from the red sphere. Were these poetic inventions, or attempts to describe something real, in the only language available at the time? And why do references to such ideas vanish after certain periods, replaced by silence? Could this be evidence of deliberate censorship? A quiet effort to contain truths too expansive for a medieval world? Even in modern times, Vatican documents remain locked behind protocols. Only select scholars are granted access, and only to carefully vetted materials. Why such caution? What knowledge still lies buried in that darkness, waiting for eyes brave enough to see? Are there parchments that speak of the twin worlds, of Mars and Earth, and the beings who once moved between them? If so, what do they say? Could timelines of Mars's collapse, migration routes, and ancient Martian languages all be waiting behind guarded doors? Could a history older than all recorded civilizations sit silently in ink, trembling beneath layers of dust? And if the Vatican holds such secrets, what responsibility does it bear in choosing silence? Perhaps the Church once believed humanity wasn't ready. Perhaps they still think so. But the stars are no longer unreachable, and Mars is now within our grasp. As we explore the red planet, might we find truths that echo those buried in the Earth's oldest library? And if we do, will the secrets of the Vatican finally meet the light of day? Or will they remain confined, tucked away in vaults beneath stone and faith, guarded by centuries of silence? Across continents and across time, ancient cultures have passed down stories that share eerie similarities. Legends of beings who descended from the sky, bearing knowledge and power, often described as arriving from a red or twin world. In South America, the Inca spoke of Viracocha, a pale-skinned, bearded figure who came after a great flood, teaching agriculture and astronomy before vanishing into the sea. In many accounts, he was said to have come from the stars, not as a deity, but as a wise teacher. Could Viracocha have been a Martian survivor, one of the last emissaries from a world teetering on collapse? Meanwhile, in the vast stretches of Africa, the Dogon people of Mali preserved detailed astronomical knowledge of the Sirius star system, which they claimed was taught by the Nomo, fish-like beings who descended in a spinning vessel. Though commonly associated with Sirius, some researchers believe the descriptions of the Nomo, including their sudden appearance during a planetary crisis, may hint at a Martian origin. Their arrival, timing, and impact mirror patterns found in other legends, raising the question, were these star beings travelers from the Red Planet, seeking refuge among early human societies? In Asia, ancient Sanskrit texts like the Vedas and the Mahabharata speak of the Vimanas, flying chariots capable of traversing great distances, even between planets. These texts describe entire wars fought in the sky, complete with sophisticated weapons and machines that resemble spaceships. Could these epics be records of conflicts that once ravaged Mars, prompting an exodus to Earth? And if so, are the characters in these sacred books literal survivors, their stories distorted only by the passage of time and translation? From China come tales of dragons descending from the heavens, not the beasts of fantasy, but symbols of wisdom, flight, and celestial origin. In ancient Japanese lore, the Tennin, heavenly maidens, descend from the stars to interact with humans, always returning to their realm when their time is done. These stories, while framed as myths, hold patterns: arrival from above, intermingling with humanity, sudden disappearance, that align with the narrative of a Martian exodus. How could such consistent elements exist across civilizations that never interacted with one another? In Indonesia and Polynesia, there are legends of the Pleiades as a home of the gods. Yet, in some variants, the gods speak not of the Pleiades themselves, but of a red star once nearby, one that changed, darkened, or vanished. Could these have been references to Mars? Seen in a different celestial arrangement thousands of years ago? What if these stories are not merely spiritual metaphors, but encoded memories of real journeys, told by those who inherited truths far older than history books acknowledge? And in the deserts of North America, the Hopi elders tell of sky people who came to guide humanity after previous world-ending disasters. Their prophecies describe cycles of return, when the star beings will walk the earth again. Is this a prediction of Martian descendants returning, or the hopeful longing of a people who once knew visitors from another world? Even among the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, ancient songs tell of ancestors who came from the sky, bringing the dreaming, the source of life and creation. Might these ancestors have come not just from above, but from a neighboring planet that once held rivers, mountains, and a sky of its own? The Maori speak of celestial canoes that brought the first people, and stories of fire in the sky that signaled a great transition. Could such imagery relate to the arrival of Martian migrants fleeing a dying world? When taken alone, each of these myths might seem like isolated flights of imagination. But together, they form a tapestry of repeating themes: red skies, sky people, sacred knowledge, flight, floods, and return. Could these recurring elements be the echoes of a great, forgotten migration? One that began when a civilization on Mars foresaw its end and sent its wisest and strongest to the blue planet nearby? If so, how much of our culture, language, and science is built on the memories and teachings of those who survived that journey. How many of these stories were once warnings or guidance, lost to interpretation over generations? The further we look back, the more we find the same shapes drawn in the sky, the same beings described with wings, fire, or light. These are not just shared symbols. They may be shared memories, scattered across the earth like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled. Perhaps the myths of Mars are not myths at all, but the earliest chapters of human history, spoken by those who once walked beneath two suns. In recent decades, scientific instruments have begun to peel back the surface of Mars, revealing a planet more complex than once imagined. Using ground-penetrating radar from orbiting spacecraft, researchers have detected curious anomalies beneath the Martian crust, patterns that defy natural formation. In certain regions, notably beneath the South Polar layered deposits and within the vast plains of Utopia Planitia, radar reflections suggest the presence of linear features resembling walls, corridors, or tunnel-like voids. These shapes do not conform to typical geological processes, prompting questions that reach beyond standard planetary science. Could these anomalies be the remnants of an artificial past, hidden under layers of dust and time? Some scientists attribute them to subsurface ice or volcanic tubes, but others argue the regularity and geometry seen in the radar echoes are far too symmetrical to be purely natural. If Mars once harbored life, especially intelligent life, might these underground patterns be the last physical evidence of a forgotten civilization? When viewed alongside other Martian enigmas, like the face on Mars and the Cydonia region's pyramid-like structures, the case for artificiality strengthens. Is it possible that when the Martian surface became uninhabitable, its people turned inward, burrowing into the planet to escape a dying atmosphere? Could cities have been built underground, where heat could be conserved and radiation shielded? The radar anomalies show connections between chambers, parallel formations, and intersections that mirror ancient architectural designs found on Earth. Might the builders have fled underground in a desperate attempt to survive extinction, their cities eventually buried by shifting sands and frozen winds? These are not idle speculations. In 2018, the European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter detected what some interpreted as a subsurface lake beneath the ice of the Martian South Pole. The existence of liquid water, if confirmed, opens the door to the possibility of hidden ecosystems or preserved structures, sealed beneath ice for millennia. And if such structures exist, what might they contain? Could there be records, tools, or even remains of those who once ruled Mars? Why do so many of these radar scans go unpublicized, tucked away in scientific papers read by few? Is there hesitation to confront the implications of a planet that once lived, and perhaps still shelters secrets? What would it mean for our understanding of history if the oldest ruins in the solar system weren't on Earth, but buried beneath Martian soil? While skeptics urge caution, the patterns remain unexplained. They speak of parallel walls stretching for kilometers, equidistant lines that run beneath untouched terrain, and voids so uniform they suggest intentional design. Are we glimpsing the last traces of a forgotten infrastructure, the bones of a lost world now entombed in rust-colored dust? If Mars truly hosted a once advanced civilization, these anomalies could be its silent witnesses, remnants not only of cities but of choices, technologies, and hopes. As more missions target the Martian surface with advanced scanning tools, how long before undeniable evidence emerges? Might future explorers descend into these darkened halls, finding carvings, writings, or relics that echo our own ancient structures? Would we recognize their purpose, or would we once again mistake the echoes of intelligence for coincidence? These questions are not just scientific, they are existential. They force us to ask what kind of ancestors we might have had, and how far the human story could stretch. Perhaps we are not the beginning, but the continuation. Perhaps the scars on Mars and the anomalies beneath its crust are chapters in a long-forgotten history waiting to be read. If that is true, then every radar pulse sent across the Martian surface is not just mapping terrain, it is searching for memory. Memory buried in tunnels, locked in stone, and written in the silence of a world that may have once been our home. Could these hidden anomalies contain vaults of forgotten technology, or the genetic blueprints of a lost species? And if so, might some of the answers we seek about human origins lie not in Earth's deserts or tombs, but beneath Martian ice? Every anomaly, every unexplained echo, becomes more than data. It becomes a potential thread in a story, stretching back to a time when two worlds were one. And perhaps, as technology improves and our curiosity deepens, the truth will no longer be buried, but brought once more to light. When examining the scattered clues of ancient civilizations, Martian anomalies, and myths from across the globe, a tentative timeline begins to emerge, one that hints at a period when Earth and Mars may have been linked by knowledge, travel, or migration. Thousands of years before recorded history, Mars may have been a thriving world, with rivers, lakes, and cities. Geological evidence shows that the planet's climate gradually deteriorated, perhaps over millennia, leading to catastrophic droughts, collapsing atmospheres, and the eventual disappearance of surface water. During this slow decline, advanced Martian civilizations may have sought refuge, developing subterranean cities to protect themselves from radiation and environmental collapse. Around the same time, sudden leaps in human knowledge appear on Earth. Agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and architecture emerge with astonishing speed. Could these bursts correspond with the arrival of Martian refugees, bringing not only knowledge but seeds of civilization itself? Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki arriving from the sky, teaching humans essential skills, while Egyptian and Vedic records recount gods or celestial visitors, imparting advanced wisdom. Across South America, Africa, and Polynesia, myths reference star people, red skies, and beings who came to guide early humanity. If we attempt to align these stories with Martian geological data, a picture forms. Perhaps the exodus from Mars began just as environmental collapse reached a tipping point, forcing the last survivors to seek Earth as a sanctuary. This timeline might place the initial Martian migration tens of thousands of years ago, coinciding with sudden cultural developments in multiple regions. Temples, observatories, and monuments were constructed in alignment with Mars or key constellations, encoding both memory and instructions for future generations. As centuries passed, some Martian settlements on Earth may have thrived, blending their legacy with local human populations, while others perished, leaving only myths and scattered artifacts. Over time, Earth experienced its own environmental and social upheavals, floods, glaciations, and societal collapses. Yet traces of Martian influence persisted, hidden in pyramids, megaliths, and star-aligned structures. The pattern suggests cycles: migration from a dying world, settlement on Earth, cultural flourishing, partial loss, and recollection in myth. Could this be why so many civilizations, separated by geography, share similar symbols, astronomical knowledge, and myths of sky people? The break between Mars and Earth, then, was not a singular event, but a prolonged series of migrations and cultural transmissions, stretching across millennia. Mars's environment became increasingly uninhabitable, solidifying the planet's desolation and isolating Earth as the surviving cradle for sentient life. From this hidden timeline emerges a profound possibility. Humanity's history is not purely terrestrial. Our ancestors may have shared knowledge, bloodlines, and culture with a planet that no longer breathes. Artifacts buried under ice, myths preserved in song, and alignments of stones across continents act as fragments of this timeline, waiting to be connected. The construction of monuments, the recording of celestial cycles, and the encoding of knowledge into DNA may all be part of an intricate timeline left for future generations to decode. By studying the geological and mythological records in parallel, we can attempt to reconstruct the phases of connection. Mars in its prime, its decline, the exodus, the arrival on Earth, the integration of knowledge, and the eventual erasure of direct memory through time. This hidden timeline suggests that Mars and Earth were not isolated worlds, but part of a larger narrative, with shared civilizations and intertwined destinies. Each myth, monument, and scientific anomaly becomes a marker on this timeline, offering hints about the sequence of events and the magnitude of what was lost. Understanding this chronology may not only illuminate the past but also guide future exploration, revealing the faint footprints of a civilization that spanned 2 planets, leaving clues buried in stone, myth, and memory for those who seek to uncover the full story. Could the sudden leaps in human development, the unexpected building of cities, the emergence of complex language, and the appearance of star knowledge be directly tied to Martian intervention or influence? Perhaps the rhythm of rise, fall, and cultural preservation mirrors that of Mars itself, echoing the cycles of environmental catastrophe and survival. Every artifact, every carving, and every celestial alignment contributes to this timeline, forming a web that stretches across space and time. The hidden timeline asks not only who we are, but what legacy came before us, and how that legacy shaped the dawn of civilization. If Mars and Earth were once connected through knowledge, travel, and survival, then our history is part of a story that spans the solar system, a story whose full understanding awaits careful reconstruction, patient study, and recognition of the faint yet persistent echoes left behind by a civilization that once thrived under twin suns. As the narrative of Mars and Earth comes into focus, the final question emerges. What does this shared history truly mean for humanity today? If the legends, anomalies, and hidden knowledge are fragments of a real story, then our understanding of origins, culture, and civilization must expand far beyond Earth alone. Could the myths of star people, the sudden leaps in ancient knowledge, the pyramids and monuments, and the preserved scrolls all be threads of a single, interplanetary tapestry woven over millennia? Mars, once a thriving world with rivers, mountains, and cities, may have sent its last survivors to Earth, leaving behind subtle markers of their existence, artifacts of knowledge, and encoded memories within human culture. The face on Mars, pyramid-like formations, and subsurface anomalies hint at a civilization that may have rivaled the earliest human settlements, leaving its influence across the solar system. Across Earth, myths and stories echo these events. Anunnaki in Sumer, gods descending in Egypt, Vimanas in India, sky people in Polynesia, and the Americas, all potentially chronicling the migration and impact of Martian exiles. If these stories are based on reality, humanity carries within it not only the story of Earth but the legacy of a twin world, preserved in DNA, monuments, and cultural memory. Modern science, from radar scans to orbiters, is only beginning to reveal the traces of these vanished Martians, while archaeology and anthropology uncover echoes in myths, monuments, and star alignments. Could we, with future exploration, finally uncover the full extent of what Mars holds? Beneath its dusty surface may lie hidden cities, archives, or technologies waiting to illuminate the origins of civilization itself, waiting to tell a story that has been buried for eons. The legacy of two worlds challenges our understanding of human history, asking us to consider that intelligence, culture, and life may have traveled beyond one planet, leaving marks on two worlds that were once interconnected. Perhaps our curiosity about Mars is not just scientific, it is ancestral, a deep-seated memory calling us to reconcile both halves of our heritage. If the puzzle pieces align, we may discover that the story of humanity is not solely earthbound, but written across the stars, with Mars as its first chapter and Earth as its continuation. The monuments, myths, and mysteries that have captivated humanity for centuries may be the final clues, guiding us to understand our place in a story far greater and far older than previously imagined. As we probe the red planet with rovers, orbiters, and future manned missions, each discovery has the potential to reconnect the timeline, bridging the gap between two worlds and illuminating a shared legacy that has waited eons to be revealed. Could Mars still hold the other half of humanity's story? Its cities, knowledge, and perhaps even descendants preserved beneath the soil, ice, and stone, hidden for millennia. And if we uncover them, how will it transform our sense of identity, history, and destiny? The implications are profound. We may be heirs not only of Earth's past, but also of Mars's vanished civilizations, carrying forward the knowledge, memory, and aspirations of a species that once spanned two worlds, leaving echoes that shaped human progress. Every myth, every monument, every scientific anomaly becomes more than curiosity. It is a signpost pointing toward a fuller story, a reminder that the human journey is intertwined with the legacy of another world. The legacy of two worlds asks us to look at the sky not only with wonder, but with recognition, understanding that our history is broader, older, and far more extraordinary than previously imagined. It calls us to continue exploring, questioning, and seeking for the truth of who we are, waiting for the moment when Mars and Earth are finally understood as two chapters of the same extraordinary saga. Perhaps one day, when we walk upon the Martian plains and uncover the remnants of its civilizations, we will finally realize that the story of humanity is not contained within a single planet, but spans across worlds, preserved in memory, stone, and the very fabric of life itself. And when that day comes, the journey of understanding our origins will have just begun.